I'm Taya Sepanuk. I'm the founder and director of the Playhouse Theater of Witness program. I've been doing Theater of Witness for the past 27 years, both in the United States and Poland, and now in Northern Ireland. And Theater of Witness is a form of performance that gives voice to people whose stories haven't been heard, often people who have had stories of great suffering. And the reason behind this work is really to find the medicine in the stories, the place of transformation, accountability, healing, and to bring people together across boundaries and across difference so that audiences can bear witness to the human stories that really unite us all. The first Theater of Witness program that I did in Northern Ireland was called We Carried Your Secrets in 2009. And it was with fathers who were in the front lines during the Troubles and the next generation of now adult children whose fathers had been on the front lines.
2008, it's my daughter's wedding rehearsal. I take her arm to walk her up the church aisle. Take a few steps. I freeze. Tears flood me. This will be the first time in 40 years I'll have walked the full length of that church. Without carrying a coffin.
The performers in We Carried Your Secrets were an RUC officer or police officer who had been on the body recovery team at one of the worst atrocities in Northern Ireland, and two people who had been in paramilitary groups, one in the IRA and one in the UDA. And then there were three young people, one whose father had been assassinated when he was just 5, and he was pretty sure that there was collusion with the police and with the Loyalist paramilitary group, one whose father had been in the RUC or the police, and one whose father who had been absent and had resorted to some antisocial behavior. We toured We Carried Your Secrets to 14 places throughout the North and across the border, and we were really met with extraordinary responses by audiences with standing ovations and tears. And I think really this project was about the legacy of what is a story, what gets passed down from one generation to another, how many generations does it take for trauma to heal, and how can we talk to each other through the generations. One of the most intriguing things about Theater of Witness is that we work with the people themselves who are the storytellers, not with actors. And that means that we work with people from a huge variety of backgrounds. And it's always people themselves who's never usually had ever been on stage, never thought they would ever want to be on stage, but they want to tell their story for the purpose of helping people understand and having the hope that them sharing their own struggle to heal and to grow will give people inspiration. The project that we did in 2010, our second project, was called I Once Knew a Girl, and it was with women whose stories really hadn't been heard related to the Troubles. We had Kathleen Gillespie, whose husband had been blown up by an IRA bomb, and a woman who herself had been in the IRA. We had women who had come from different sides of the sectarian divide, one who's been burned out of her house, women who had suffered domestic abuse and sexual abuse, and a serving police officer.
This time they chained Patsy to a van loaded with 1,000 pounds of explosives and forced him to drive it to the army checkpoint at Coshquin, where it was detonated by remote control. 5 soldiers, as well as Patsy, were blown up in that explosion.
These stories are often really hidden, and it was really deeply moving to see these women build a community of sisterhood and love. The third production that we did was called Release, which we performed in 2012, and it was with all men. The performers in Release included a former British soldier who had served in Northern Ireland as well as Iraq and Afghanistan, a former prison governor who had been at the Maze or Long Kesh during some of the worst difficulties with prisoners who were serving long sentences and having riots. 2 men who had been prisoners, one who had been brutalized, a detective who had gone to 177 murder investigations and had lost partners to violence, and a man who as a child had been blown up in a car bomb.
I hear the bang of the gun on the roof of the car. The second guy gets out. He's carrying something. It's like a wee red and black tartan bag. What is it? Where's my doll? Hell's breaking loose.
There was something about this group of all men that really got to the core of what is expected of men in terms of violence, in terms of adrenaline, in terms of manhood, in terms of power, in terms of honor, and how do they heal from that which has happened to them and that which they got caught up in. Theater of Witness, by its very nature, is a highly collaborative art form. I'm collaborating with the performers, listening to their stories, scripting it, beginning to direct them. But we also collaborate with filmmakers and composers and musicians, and we work with a lot of different community groups. This work is really supported deeply by the Playhouse in Derry, Londonderry, as well as Holywell Trust, a Peace and Reconciliation Center. And both Pauline and Eamon from the Playhouse and Holywell Trust have been extraordinary producers. We've been lucky to be funded by the EU to do this work through 2 fairly large Peace 3 grants. And it's been a real honor and a pleasure to be able to bring some of this work back to Brussels to show them what these true stories of ex-combatants and witnesses and survivors really are. I believe that the people who are in Theater of Witness really are the peacemakers. They're the grassroots peacemakers who are willing to mine their own story in order to give the sense of possibility to others.